Everyone thought he was a homeless loser, but he turns out to be the strongest legendary samurai after saving a girl. The story starts with a seemingly plain samurai walking along a dark alley when suddenly a young girl named Kaoru stops him in his tracks. She believes that he is Batusai, a vicious murderer, because nobody else will walk with a sword since it has been banned in Japan. She vows to end Batusai's killing spree because he was claiming to use the sword style her father created to defame his legacy. However, when she charges at him, he tries to dodge and stumbles to the ground, which makes Kaoru realize that he might not be the rumored killer after all. At this point, the man introduces himself as Kenshin, a wandering samurai without a destination. She points to his sword, asking him why he has it, and he simply tells her that this is a fake sword that cannot kill anyone, and he just carries it to scare thieves. Their little introduction is interrupted by loud police whistles, so Kao rushes to check what's happening, only to see a huge masked bandit killing the officers. Kao engages the man but gets injured, and just when he's about to finish her off, Kenshin arrives to pull her out of the way. With more officers arriving at the scene, the huge bandit retreats, but not before claiming that he's Himura Batusai. Kao tries to go after him, but Kenshin stops her from doing so as she might get hurt, and her resistance is futile. She takes him back to her family dojo where she lives alone with an old servant named Kahai who quickly patches up her wounds. She tells Kenshin that her father created a special sword style that they teach at this dojo, but Batusai the bandit is using this name while committing murders that has made all of her students run away, and that's why she wants to stop him. Ken tells her that she stands no chance in a duel against that monster of a man and suggests she drop this idea if she cares about her life before leaving. Kahai seems to be suspicious of the lone samurai and advises Kao not to tell all her secrets to anyone as people might take advantage of her. A few days later, while she is in the city to do some shopping with Kahai, she suddenly spots Ken on the ground while two police officers try to arrest him for carrying around a sword. She tries to reason with the officer but fails, forcing Kahai to bribe the officers to free the man instead. Ken thanks her and asks whether she got any more leads on the killer, only for her to reply that she got tipped off about a dojo a few miles away where the killer might be hiding with his gang. Ken looks at Kahei and then asks Kao how she knows him, and she reveals that she found him injured on the road and decided to adopt him like a stray puppy. Ever since that day, he stays with her as her attendant and advisor, but lately he has been suggesting she sell the dojo. Kao then asks Kenshin to stay over at her place for tonight, but he is no simp and says he has errands to run. That night, he goes up to the dojo where Kao thinks the killer is and knocks at the door, which is answered by a drunk samurai. The man asks Ken what the hell does he want, and without hesitation, Ken reveals that he is here for the killer. The man at the door is shocked but immediately calls out his mates who surround Ken from all sides. He beats them all, but realizes that the giant swordsman is not here and he has already left to attack Kao. In her dojo, Kao drinks some tea provided by Kaib, and he turns out to be a grade A molester who roofied her drink, and she starts losing consciousness. Without losing a second, she starts getting pushed by Kai to sell the dojo, and he claims that the paperwork is ready, so she just has to sign it. She refuses to do so, but just then the door of the dojo is flung open, and the giant samurai enters with several other of his underlings and takes off his mask to reveal that he is Kai's younger brother. Kao quickly realizes that she was being deceived by Kai ever since he came to her. He was trying to tarnish her dojo's reputation in hopes of driving away all the students and then forcefully buying the place. The big brute walks towards Kao and easily overpowers her while Kai slices her finger to get a drop of blood and gets her thumbprint on the documents. Just when all seemed lost, Kenshin arrives at the dojo after taking out all the bandits in their hideout. Enraged by this, the brute orders his men to attack, but Kenshin defeats them with overwhelming speed. The big bandit is terrified by his speed as he reveals that Batusai does not use the style Kao's dad created, but an ancient sword style that has been lost for countless years. The brute doesn't understand what the last line implies, so he challenges Kenshin to a sword fight, who easily defeats him with a single slash. After that, he turns towards Kihai to deal with him, but he has already shat his pants in fear and loses consciousness. Kenshin rips the contract apart after seeing his epic skills. Kao realizes that he's the real Batusai, but he does not wish to talk about it, and simply bids her farewell. However, before he can walk out the door, Kao tells him to stay and asks him to help her bring the sword style to its former glory. He advises her against it, reminding her how dangerous it would be for the real Batusai to linger around. But despite his attempts to dissuade her, she insists that she doesn't care about people's pasts. Desperate to make him stay, she asks him to stay as the wandering samurai, but when all her efforts seem futile, she asks him to at least tell her his real name before leaving. He reveals that his name is Kenshin Himura before admitting that he is a bit tired of traveling and agreeing to stay here for the time being. Kao was delighted by this, but her joy suddenly turns into suspicion when she remembers that the legendary Batusei fought in the war 10 years ago. So she asks Kenshin his real age, believing that he can't possibly be over 30 years old with the face he has, but he is caught off guard by her interrogation and can't give an answer. A few weeks later, no student has returned to Kao's dojo even after their name was cleared. She is frustrated because of this, but as Kenshin tells her that good things take time, she moves back to the question of his age again. She claims that he doesn't look old enough to be a legendary samurai, not that she wants the age gap between them so much that she can't date him. Later, they go to a nearby dojo so Kao can practice when a pickpocket tries to swipe Kenshin's purse. Kao catches the boy and takes the purse back, and the boy curses her, calling her an old hag. As she quarrels with the boy, Kenshin says that there is no need to get so hyper and hands the wallet to the boy, asking him not to get caught next time. Kenshin walks away, but the furious boy throws the wallet at him, saying that he is Yahiko Myojin, a descendant of a Tokyo samurai, and he has not sunk so low to accept charity. He runs away, and Kenshin is impressed by his character as he claims that the boy is already a man at heart. After that, Kenshin and Kao explore the market, where she wants to know why the strongest imperialist was content to be a wandering swordsman when he could take a great government office, but she doesn't ask him anything. Anyway, she sends him out for some shopping, and on her way to the neighboring dojo, and walks to her friend's dojo, but almost immediately, she learns from some excited people that the police have caught a man carrying a sword and realizes Kenshin is in danger. Kenshin is surrounded by cops who want to arrest him, and he decides to surrender calmly to avoid any trouble. Just then, a racist, sword-bearing police arrive there and shove everyone away. Their leader, Yujiki, says he will take charge and neutralize the criminal and hits the policeman, who tells him that the criminal wants to surrender. The Dutchbag then points his sword at Kenshin, asking him to draw his own, but Kenshin replies that he does not wield his sword uselessly. Just then, Kao arrives there, worried about Kenshin, and Yujiki sees a chance. He commands his men to take her hostage, threatening to cut her clothes if Kenshin does not draw his sword. The people chant woke slogans against the brutality of sword-bearing police, but as Yujiki tells his men to arrest them and kill those who resist, they run like cowards. Kenshin has had enough of this, and he draws his sword, telling Yujiki that he won't let him harm Kao or anyone here. That was just what the Dutchbag wanted, and he declares that he will kill Kenshin in the name of self-defense now. However, Kenshin takes down the policeman with ease, even when they attack him from all sides. As only Yujiki is left to face him, the police captain arrives there with a distinguished guest, who he immediately recognizes Kenshin as the legendary samurai. Yujiki attacks Kenshin, who dodges his attack with lightning speed and knocks him down. He becomes a local hero who stood up to the tyrants, but then the dignified man calls him Batusei. Kenshin recognizes the man as Yamagata, an old friend who fought alongside him in the revolution against the shoguns. Yamagata states that he is a general now, and he wants Kenshin to join him as a high-ranking officer. Kenshin politely refuses his offer, claiming that he has no intention to live as a manslayer anymore. Yamagata tells Kenshin that no matter what people think about him, he was always an honorable man, and the revolution to overthrow the tyrannical shoguns was possible only because of him. He promises to deal with those who dare disrespect the strongest imperialist, but Kenshin does not want that and tells him that he is no longer the man he was in the past. He walks away declaring that he is living a new life, but Yamagata reminds him that the age of samurai has passed, and now he cannot do anything on his own. Kenshin places his hand on Kao's shoulder as he replies that he can still protect those who are dear to him, leaving the general speechless. As they return home, Kao finally realizes that Kenshin became a wandering swordsman so that he could leave his life full of violence behind and use his sword to protect people. Meanwhile, Yahiko, the pickpocket, who saw Kenshin in action earlier, was so moved by his bravery and character that he confronted the gangsters he was working with, clearly telling them that he would no longer do the dirty deeds for them. That earns him an ass-whooping from the gangster, who declares he will make an example of him. Luckily, Kao was returning from her practice at the same time, and she noticed the boy being carried away. The gangsters take Yahiko to their hideout and beat him in front of their boss, but he still refuses to work for them. The boss tells the boy that he is no samurai, no matter how many times he claims to be one, and he cannot survive with his pride alone. Yahiko gives his response by spitting on the floor, and this makes all the gangsters furious. They lynch him while telling him that his father was a useless rebel, and his mother sold her body and died of STDs. Yahiko doesn't let that remark slide and bites the balls of the man bad-mouthing his parents. He declares that both his parents were people of great character and honor, and no one here would understand them with their pea-sized brains. The angry gangster is about to slash him when suddenly the door bursts open as Kenshin makes his entry. He simply tells the boss to let go of the kid, and when the angry guy interrupts him, He sends him through the roof with one swift hit. Kenshin turns to the boss, saying all his guards have been defeated, and if he doesn't cooperate, he will join them. The old man is terrified of his aura and agrees to let him take the boy. Kenshin then offers his hand to Yaiko, who slaps it away and says that he does not need anyone's help to fight his battles. Kenshin apologizes for underestimating him once again, but then picks him up and runs away, saying he needs to get his injuries treated first. As he is being carried, Yaiko cries and expresses his frustration at being weak, saying that he wants to be strong enough to defend his parents' honor. So when Kenshin reaches Kao's dojo, he introduces her to the boy and tells her to take him as a student. Neither of them are happy about it, and Yahiko calls Kao a boomer, while she calls him an iPad kid. Despite that, she needs a student and he needs a master, so they accept each other. Yahiko does not stop throwing shade at Kao even after joining the dojo and refuses to accept her as his master. Instead, he asks Kenshin to teach him because he is the strongest guy around, but Kenshin has no intention of passing on his lethal sword style. Yahiko plays hide and seek with Kao and insults her, saying she is a useless teacher because otherwise her students would have returned. He was expecting her to fight back, but seeing her feel sad, he also has nothing to say. Just then, two of Kao's former students come to the dojo with serious injuries and with two armed attackers pursuing them. Kao saves her students by knocking out the attackers and then learns that they stood up to a bunch of drunkards harassing people who came back with friends to attack them. Before they have time to explain, more attackers come there and Kao tells everyone to hide in the dojo. However, the drag queen who leads the attackers says that they will show the true power of their gang. Inside, Kao is worried because Kenshin is out shopping and they are on their own now. Yahiko tells her that she doesn't need to cover for these people because they are not telling the truth. He can smell liquor on them and bets that they were the drunkards harassing people. As the two boys avert their gaze, Kao is shocked to realize that Yahiko is right. However, there are more things to be shocked about as the wall of her dojo is blown away. The gangsters outside use their wooden cannon, a more primitive version of the glass cannon, to destroy the wall, and their leader threatens to kill those who attacked his men. Yahiko roasts the two men more than Eminem roasted MGK, and says that they are spineless cowards who ran away during the serial killer incident and have now returned here to seek shelter after committing crimes. Just then, the drag queen comes in to take revenge, and while Yahiko is more than happy to let them take their criminals, Kao is not. She steps up and takes responsibility for the conduct of her former students, and asks the gangsters to punish her but forgive her 3 students. The drag queen is about to be turned straight by her charms when Yahiko dropkicks him in the face. He lashes out at Kao, saying he doesn't need her protection and she does not need to bear all burdens alone. Now the drag queen is furious, and he orders his men to slaughter everyone. However, Kenshin returns just then and asks what is going on. The gangsters already know of his heroics from the other day, but the drag queen orders them to blow him up with the wooden cannon. Kenshin doesn't even flinch as he uses the sharp side of his sword to cut the cannonball in half. He warns the gangsters to get out, and they immediately run away, terrified of his power. Kenshin then tells the 2 losers to never return here or ever associate with the name of this dojo. Later, Kao is still sad about the incident from before and she doesn't feel better when Kenshin tries to cheer her up. However, Yahiko tells her to stop thinking about the wimps because she now has a real man to teach. He declares he will settle for taking her as his master from now on and asks her to help out in repairing the dojo. Soon, Yahiko starts training in earnest, but he gets distracted from his swinging rhythm by the beat of Kenshin chopping wood. As he is lecturing him to work somewhere else, Kao comes there with good news. She shows Kenshin and Yahiko an ink painting that was made by her grandfather, who was a pretty famous artist, and she plans to sell it to earn enough cash to keep them going for a decade. Kao wants to celebrate cashing in on generational wealth and takes the boys to a hot pot restaurant. As they take their seats, they find 3 drunk men creating a ruckus as they discuss democracy. One of them throws a bottle at his friend and misses, hitting Kenshin's head instead. Yahiko is furious on his behalf and tells the drunkards to apologize, but they are too wasted to hear his words. The hostess comes to calm them down, but they hit her and a macho man named Sanosuke Sagara gently holds her. He calls out the 3 drunkards for being hypocrites who discuss democracy and bully the weak and claims that he likes to show bullies their place. His taunt works and the 3 men call him outside to fight. Kenshin and his team also go outside to witness the show. Sano asks the drunkards to attack him first, and one of them uses a hidden spike to punch him in the head. However, his attack was as useless as Sakura, and even though he was hoping to drill through the man's head, his hand got pierced instead. Sano declares that he can defeat people like him with 1 finger, and he delivers on his words by sending him flying with just 1 finger flick to the forehead. Another drunkard draws his sword, but Kenshin intimidates him, saying he won't let things escalate beyond a drunken brawl. The terrified man leaves, and then Sano asks Kenshin if his head is fine now. He knows that Kenshin saw the attack coming but didn't dodge it on purpose because it would hit Kao then. Kenshin claims he is overestimating him, but Sano replies that he likes his attitude and challenges him to a duel. Kenshin refuses, and the man leaves, flaunting the letters "bad" written on the back of his shirt. Kenshin and his friends discuss whether he is a good guy or a bad one when the hostess comes there and complains that he did not pay his bills. The truth is that Sano is actually a mercenary, and he has been hired by Kai, the servant who betrayed Kao, to kill Kenshin. Sano does not like the payment they are offering, but when Kahai reveals that Kenshin is actually Batusei, he is excited about having a good fight with him. He takes his time to research Kenshin's past and then goes to face him head-on. Kenshin senses his battle aura even before Sano enters the gates of the dojo. He goes to meet him and refuses to have a duel with him, but Sano declares that he is here on a mission to slay the legendary Batusei. He reveals Kenshin's hidden past, saying he worked for the Imperialist army from the age of 14 to 19 and served as an assassin, as well as a commando swordsman. Although only the second job gave him fame as a legendary swordsman. He then declares that all Imperialists are hypocrites who only preach about justice while filling their pockets. That is why he plans to beat Kenshin, the strongest Imperialist, in a fair fight. Meanwhile, the two scheming brothers are waiting outside the dojo. Kahai is certain that Sano will lose to Kenshin, but he is counting on him to weaken the swordsman enough so that he can finish him with his revolver. However, Kenshin can already sense their malicious aura and calls them outside. As the brothers shiver and sweat, Sano also tells them to come out, and once they are in front of him, he confiscates Kihai's gun and crushes it, declaring that he won't let any loser interfere in his fight. After that, Seto turns to Kenshin and says that they should move somewhere wider so he can wield his weapon properly. They go to the riverside where he reveals a giant-ass sword, which is still a few inches shorter than my sword. Sano claims that he can crush everything with his sword and rushes at Kenshin, dealing a powerful blow. Kenshin easily dodges that attack and moves behind Sano, sending him flying with one hit. That was not nearly enough to knock out Sano, who declares that his true power is taking devastating hits without flinching. He says that the one who hits harder doesn't win in the battle. It is the one who does not go down, but Kenshin tells him to give this speech after he actually wins. Sano announces the beginning of round 2 and charges at Kenshin with his giant sword. Kenshin dodges his swing and then perches on the sword to mess with his balance. He then goes low and launches a barrage of attacks on Sano, believing that even he cannot take so many strikes from him. Sano is knocked out cold, and he realizes that Kenshin is not just on a different level, he is in a different galaxy. As Sano begins to lose consciousness, he remembers the events that shaped his life. 10 years ago, he traveled with the Sekio Army, a righteous squad of the Imperialist Revolutionary Army that went around Japan, turning people to their side by promising better policies after coming to power. Their leader, Sagara, was the most honorable and kind man who strived for true equality. Sano looked up to the captain and wanted to have his surname in the world where even commoners would be allowed to take up surnames. However, one day they learned that the Imperialist faction had recalled their better policies, and to avoid backlash, they declared that the Sekio army was fake and spreading lies. Sagara decided to retreat to their headquarters to think of their strategy, leaving Sano and another boy his age behind. Soon, Sano got terrified news about his captain and found that he had been executed by the Imperialists to free themselves from the backlash about the policy. That day, Sano realized that the Imperialists were hypocrites who used and deceived his father figure. He swore to take revenge against them, and that thought rekindles his spirits as he gets up to fight against Kenshin once more. Sano declares that he cannot lose and will defeat all Imperialists for the honor of the Sekio army. Kenshin is taken aback by hearing that name and lets his guard down for Sano to land a hit on him. Kahai was waiting for this chance and shoots Kenshin, telling Sano that he had brought more than one gun. However, even though it looked like Kenshin took the bullet, he blocked it with his sword's hand guard. Kao is relieved to see that her future husband is safe, and she falls to her knees. Kai decides to use her against Kenshin, and he points his gun at her, asking his brother to catch her. However, Sano throws his sword at the giant man, cutting his nose and telling him to stop butting in his fight. Kenshin then looks at Kahai, who draws another gun to shoot him, but Kenshin uses his lethal combo on him with enough control to not kill him. As Kahai rolls in pain because of the hit, Kenshin declares that men like him deserve to have the word evil on their backs, as do Imperialists like him. Sano asks him to come back to the fight, and Kenshin turns the sharp edge of his sword against him. Sano spins his giant sword to add centrifugal force to it as Kenshin takes his stance. They both clash with each other, and Kenshin's sword cuts through Sano's weapon. He then jumps up and lands the finishing blow on Sano's head, but he is still standing. Kenshin claims he is the toughest man he has faced, but he declares that the fight is over. However, Sano is still adamant that he won't lose to an imperial pig. Kenshin has had enough of his whining and punches him, telling him that the Sekido army wouldn't have taught him revenge but revolution. Sano refuses to hear the words of a former imperialist, but Kao and Yahiko come in support of Kenshin, saying he's a good man and no longer an imperialist. Kenshin then walks up to him, telling him that while the revolution succeeded and the government changed, there are still people who are trapped in the unhappiness of the past, and he wants to bring happiness to them. He claims that this is his way to atone for all his crimes as the Badosai, and Sano feels that he is the same as his righteous captain. He falls down and accepts his defeat. The next day, Kenshin is a bit depressed about his past and Sano's words, so Kao takes him out for lunch once again. However, just as they reach their regular restaurant, they find Sano fighting against the three drunkards again. He tells Kenshin that his personality won't change so easily, and he won't ever forgive the imperialists, but he has acknowledged that Kenshin is no longer the cold-blooded murderer he used to be. He says he will stay around to keep an eye on him so that he doesn't stray from his peaceful path again, and Kenshin thinks he is quite an odd guy. Soon, Sano becomes a freeloader at Kao's dojo and has the audacity to complain about the taste of free food. Kao is furious at him and throws pots and fish at him, but Sano uses Kenshin as his meat shield. While they are goofing around, the police captain comes there to ask Kenshin for a favor. He tells Kenshin that lately a manslayer has been targeting former imperialists who are now in government offices. He first sends a message detailing the date and time he will come for them, and he kills them at the exact time, no matter how much they boost their security. The police captain says that one survivor reported that his body stopped moving in front of the murderer, and Kenshin gets an idea about what martial arts he was using. He accepts the captain's request, who takes him to the man he is going to protect. A short, fat, and ugly man whose only saving grace is his money and position. He is arrogant, thinking that his hired guards can handle anything, but as he sees Kenshin, who was once his senior in the imperialist army, he immediately becomes docile. Sano is also there, and he recognizes all the hired guards because he has beaten them all before. Kenshin and Sano wait for the murderer to come and pass time playing Japanese chess. As Sano remarks that Kenshin seems to know about the attacker, they hear a scream and realize that the murderer is here already. Everyone gets on guard, but as the clock strikes 1, a man gets cut from behind and the assailant makes his entry through the window. Even Kenshin breaks a sweat on seeing him because he can see the evil in his eyes. The fat man tells his guards to attack the assassin, promising them money and a government job, but all they get is instant death for going after someone much stronger than them. Sano stops everyone and tells them to get away, but then the attacker uses his secret move and paralyzes everyone with just one glare. Sano can still move and asks him what kind of sorcery this is, impressing the man with his tenacity. Kenshin steps up after that and attacks him, but it turns out that they were evenly matched. Kenshin got injured by the assassin's attack but managed to cut his hat into 2. Just by exchanging swords with the man, Kenshin has realized his real identity. He had heard about a master swordsman named Jin who had no loyalty to any faction in the war and joined whichever side allowed him to kill more. Jin uses his petrifying technique on Kenshin, who uses his strong spirit to break free instantly, and challenges Jin. Certain that he won't lose, but Jin attacks the fat man first. Sano also frees himself from the paralysis with his spirit and breaks Jin's sword before he can kill anyone. Jin stabs Sano's arm with his broken sword, and using that chance, Kenshin injures him, breaking his spell over everyone else. Jin retreats, telling Kenshin that he will leave the fatty alone, but he is going to be his next target. He taunts Kenshin to get a real sword to fight him next time before he leaves. As Kenshin returns home, he explains to Sano that the paralysis spell was not magic or a trick, but just an application of hypnosis, overwhelming confidence, and a sword aura that could freeze those weaker than the caster. Sano thinks that Jin dug his own grave by challenging the strongest man around, but Kenshin is not so confident because while he hasn't killed anyone in the past 10 years, Jin is getting a lot of practice. Kenshin then tells Sano that he plans to finish this battle alone and asks him to look over Kao and Yahiko. Sano returns to the dojo and wakes Kao up, who is worried after learning everything that happened. She wants to search for Kenshin, not because she fears he will lose, but because she feels he will leave on a journey after winning this fight. Sano tries to stop her, saying that going out was practically suicide, but she replies that it is better than being all alone after Kenshin has left her as she runs away crying. Kenshin is waiting for Jin by the river when he notices a scary aura, but he is aghast when he learns it is coming from Kao. She reveals that Sano told her everything, and she wants to stay by his side. Kenshin replies that he can't fight while protecting her and asks her to go back. Kao agrees but gives him her favorite ribbon as a good luck charm, asking him to return it to her after winning so that he does not leave on a journey. Kenshin promises to not leave her and she is happy, but then suddenly Jin swoops her away, smiling like a menace. Kenshin can only react the way I did on seeing this, and his jaw drops as he processes what just happened. He furiously chases Jin, who asks him to be more angry since his woman has been kidnapped. He tosses Kenshin a letter, asking him to return to his true self and come to fight him seriously. Kenshin reads the letter and tears it up after he reaches the location specified in it. At the location, Kao tries to taunt Jin, saying he is a coward who cannot fight Kenshin without a hostage, but he says that it is the other way around. He claims that right now Kenshin is only 1/10 of his former self, and he wants to make him angry to bring out his real abilities. He tells the girl how he saw Kenshin in the war 10 years ago when he was in the elite samurai squad Shinseng Uni. Kenshin killed 3 of the strongest samurais of the elite squad in a flash and left him alive to implant fear in the hearts of others. Jin says he would have been ratioed at that time, but now he has become much stronger. He claims it will be an epic showdown between 2 manslayers, but Kato believes her Kenshin is not a murderer anymore. Just then, the clock strikes 12 and Kenshin arrives looking like an entirely different person. He challenges Jin, who exclaims that he is glad to see the real Batusei. They both rush at each other with rage, and they are pretty evenly matched. Kenshin keeps pushing Jin back, countering his paralysis spell and tracking his attacks. He finds the correct chance to intercept his attack and is about to strike him down, but Jin uses a hidden move to catch the blade behind his back and stabs Kenshin before kicking him away. Jin expresses disappointment that Kenshin is still not serious, so he raises the stakes by using the paralysis spell at Kao. He immediately paralyzes her to the point where even her lungs stop working, and she starts suffocating. Jin tells Kenshin that his girl has 2 minutes left before she dies an ugly death due to suffocation, but he can still save her by killing the spellcaster. Kenshin is furious and moves faster than Jin can see, breaking his nose. Jin enjoys seeing this side of Kenshin again, who claims he will kill him now. Jin attacks Kenshin but backs away mid-flight as he is intimidated by his murderous intent. Kenshin tells him to free Kao if he's afraid, but Jin claims that it is beyond his control now. Kao can either free herself with her willpower or Kenshin can free her by killing him, but Jin claims neither is possible. He looks into his reflection in the sword and hypnotizes himself, literally manifesting his dream body by saying that he is the strongest. After Jin is done buffing up just with a mirror pep talk, he demonstrates his power by turning a rock into pebbles with his sword play. He tells Kenshin that he is going to use this unfair technique on him, but Kenshin doesn't even care because he has already said he is going to kill Jin, and now not even God can save his life. Kenshin takes his stance and Jin is terrified because he knows that it is the stance used for the divine speed sword draw technique that kills the enemy with one quick slash before they can even react. However, he is still in the middle of his affirmations and convinces himself that he can dodge them. He rushes to Kenshin, thinking that having a dull sword will make his sword draw slower and he can dodge his ultimate attack and turn the tables on him with a counter. Kenshin attacks Jin as he reaches his range, but Jin barely dodges it and counterattacks. However, Kenshin uses the quick draw with his Sheath 2 and breaks Jin's arm at the elbow. Jin falls to the ground and Kenshin tells him to prepare to die as he turns the sharp edge of his sword towards him, claiming he has no choice but to return to being a murderer to save Kao. Kao was worried about him and doesn't want the kind Kenshin to kill anyone again. She struggles and cries out his name, breaking free of the paralysis spell with the power of love. Kenshin stops as soon as he hears her cry and rushes to her side, and she's happy that she could stop him from turning back into a killer. Just then, Jin appears behind Kenshin with his sword pointed at him and says that he did not hope that the woman could break free of his paralysis. Kenshin tells him that the fight is over and he should wait for the police to arrest him, but Jin replies that he is not going to get arrested. Kenshin picks up his sword to attack him, but then Jin suddenly stabs himself. He tells the shocked Kenshin that this is the consequence of his actions. He states that he was working for the imperialist government and killing the people it did not want in office. He tells Kenshin that no one can escape the path of blood after they start walking on it. However, a manslayer doesn't have the right to choose their target, and he made the mistake of challenging Kenshin, which was the reason for his downfall. Jin smiles at Kenshin, saying that a murder is only a murder until he dies and claims that he will be the same. He says he will watch him from the edge of hell and see how long he can go on pretending to be a wandering swordsman. Jin dies with that, and Kenshin decides to leave the rest to the police as he returns home with Kao. She thanks him for saving her life, but he thanks her for stopping him from killing Jin. Kenshin returns the ribbon to her as promised, but it is stained in blood and Kao furiously chases after him. After that, they return to the dojo and Kenshin keeps thinking about Jin's words. He wants to tell them to keep watching over him from hell. Even if his true nature is a murderer, he swears to hold it back his entire life and be just a wandering swordsman who doesn't kill anyone. Their routine life resumes, and one day, Keo learns from Yahiko that Kenshin and Sano have gone out for gambling. Sano practically forced Kenshin to come with him so he could utilize his sharp observation skills to predict the results of dice, and Kenshin makes the correct prediction every time. As Sano has fun ripping off his friends, he learns that one of his friends overdosed on drugs. He is furious about the whole drug business, but then suddenly, a woman escaping from her pursuers runs into their building. She sees Kenshin carrying a sword and immediately clings to him, realizing he is the top key here. She asks him to save her from some evil men who arrive to take her at the exact same moment. Sano was already pissed off about the drugs, and he punched the two men in the face, asking them to get lost. The men threaten him that they are from the private army of the largest businessman in the area and he shouldn't make enemies with him. Sano does not care and crushes his face, but his friends are stunned when hearing that the men work for the business tycoon Kanryu, who was known for his shady businesses and great influence. Kenshin asks the woman if she is Kanryu's girlfriend, but she replies that she is not connected with him at all. Just then, a shaky voice calls her Megumi and says it is not good to lie. Everyone is shocked to see that the voice was coming from a goblin-like man who had snuck into the room without letting anyone notice. Megumi confronts him, saying that she is not Kanryu's woman and will get away from his grip, but Goblin laughs, saying it is not possible. Two men confront him, but he shoots drill bullets at them with his fingers and injures them. Next, he is about to shoot Megumi, but Kenshin flips the mat to provide cover and blocks the bullets with his sheath. Goblin is about to attack again. Kenshin and Sano knock him out before that. Megumi is impressed by their strength, especially Kenshin's, and she asks them to protect her from Kanryu, promising to pay them in cash or in kind. Sano furiously grabs her hand, asking her to explain everything in detail as two of his buddies got injured because of her. She snaps her hand away and some packets fall down from her sleeves. One man identifies them as the drugs that were gaining popularity in the market. Meanwhile, Kao is wondering why Kenshin has not returned yet, and Yahiko says he might be winning big or losing all. He suggests that maybe he will return in just underwear after losing, and Kao blushes as she imagines it. Just then, she hears Kenshin's voice and runs outside to greet him, but she is flabbergasted when she sees an unknown woman with him. Kenshin is about to explain the situation to Kao, but Sano shuts his mouth and says that they won Megumi in gambling. He asks Kenshin to hide the truth because he doesn't want Yahiko and Kao to be involved in the drugs case, and Kenshin has no choice but to accept his suggestion, so he seconds Sano's statement about winning Megumi. That gives him a punch in the face as Kao says she never thought he would stoop so low. Kao then asks Megumi to return, promising to drill some manners into the two men, but she clings to Kenshin, saying she has no intention to leave his side ever. Yahiko praises Kenshin, saying he is his role model in one more way now, and he earns a smack from Kao too. She tries to convince Megumi to go away, but she teases her by saying that she can satisfy Kenshin more than her and gets kicked out of the dojo along with the two men. Kenshin and Sano say it is all Megumi's fault and ask her to explain her ties with drugs, but she pulls the woman card and says it is private information she won't share with men she doesn't trust. Just then, one of Sano's friends comes running and tells him about a terrible accident. The two men who were chasing Megumi earlier were found dead by the riverside. Megumi claims that they were useless, so Kanryu removed them. Kenshin looks around and finds the goblin, a tall edgelord who gives off a strong aura, and a horse-faced man with glasses. Megumi says that Horseface is Kanryu, and the tall guy is the recently hired leader of his second batch of guards. She says that he is a genius ninja Ashi, who leads the infamous ninja brigade known as the Ono One Banshu. Kenshin realizes that the opponents they face are dangerous, and they can't leave Megumi alone to fend for herself, even if she can't tell them her reasons. Later at night, Kenshin collects information about the enemy army, and Megumi tells her all about Kanryu's guards, but she believes not even Kenshin will be able to deal with the Onua Banshu ninjas. As they talk, Kao is snooping outside, and Sama tells her it is not a good habit. Kao is flustered and says her future husband may be stolen at this rate, but Sano pats her head, saying nothing like that will happen. He assures her that Kenshin is only giving the woman so much time because she needs help, and Kenshin is too kind to refuse her. Just then, Kenshin comes out and gives Sano the list of enemy numbers and says that the ninjas must have already found out about the dojo, and they can attack any time. He promises to protect Kao, unlike the last time, and she blushes before demanding a proper explanation when everything is over. Suddenly, Yagiko pops out from under the floor, saying that he hid there after dinner and heard everything. He rants about being left out of Team Kenshin and says he will fight alongside them too. As Yahiko and Sano quarrel, Megumi remembers that she also used to have friends and family like this in the past. Just then, an explosion rattles the dojo gate, and everyone rushes outside to find that Cart Titan's younger brother has broken through the gate and is demanding Kenshin return Megumi. Sano decides to fight Cardi because he likes taking on men bigger than him, but Kenshin warns him to beware of tricks. Sano rushes at the man, dodges his first attack, and then gives him a hard hit to the gut. However, Cardi was waiting just for that, and he breathes in like my yoga teacher, exhales, and clinks his teeth to breathe fire. Sano is under fire but dodges it barely, and then Kenshin decides to step up and deal with the cart titan and his circus tricks. Cardi breathes fire at him, but Kenshin slashes it, much to everyone's shock. As the man keeps on attacking him with fire breath, Kenshin keeps on cutting it, and Megumi tries to run away using this confusion. Kao stops her, asking her to watch Kenshin fight because he is doing that only to protect her. Megumi replies that he cannot win against the fire-breathing giant, but Kao tells her to wait and watch. Cardi runs out of gas soon, and Kenshin is still untouched by fire, making Megumi realize that he is really no ordinary swordsman. The man drinks gasoline to refill a fuel tank in his stomach, and before Kenshin can stop him, Sano steps up and declares that he can finish the fight because he has realized his trick now. Cardi launches his maximum power fire breath, believing no one can dodge it, but Sano rushes into the fire instead. He shoves his fist inside Cardi's mouth and pulls out the fuel bag inside his gut, telling him he can't win now. Cardi throws the words back at Sano, saying he can't win with that injured arm of his, but Sano shows him his legs are still fine and KOs him with a kick. However, Goblin was also hiding behind the bushes and he couldn't digest another failure. He's about to attack Megumi, but Kenshin notices his bloodlust first and alerts everyone. It seems too late for that, as the Goblin shoots the drill bullet at her, but Yahiko comes in at the last moment and blocks it with his arm. Kao was worried about him and scolds him for being reckless, but Yahiko is determined to not be left out of Team Kenshin's mission to protect the woman. Just after saying this, he collapses and Goblin laughs, saying that the boy won't last an hour because of the poison on the bullet. Kenshin is furious and attacks him, but someone uses Naruto's techniques and replaces Goblin with a wooden block. Kenshin turns around and sees a man with a demon mask and striped arms who had arrived out of nowhere and saved Goblin from him. He can tell that the masked man is strong and he decides to defeat him too. However, the masked man Hanya declares that he has no intention to push his luck and will retreat with his injured friends for now. Kenshin has no problem with that, but he wants Goblin to be left behind to create the antidote for Yahiko's poison. Hanya says he has no obligation to do that, and Kenshin decides to force him to obey. He attacks him, but Hanya blocks his sword with his iron fist and disbalances Kenshin before punching him away. He then picks up his friends and runs away, telling Kenshin that they will face each other soon enough. Kenshin immediately goes to Yahiko, where others are fretting about how to save him. He suggests they can suck poison out first, and Kao is about to do that when Megumi stops her, calling the idea beyond stupid. She tells Kao that it is no place for amateurs and asks her not to leave the treatment to her. She scans for Yahiko's symptoms and decodes which kind of poison was used on him. Megumi then asks Kao to call her regular doctor with some specified ingredients, and the doctor is able to treat Yahiko with the procedure she suggested. The doctor declares that Yahiko will be fine in a few days and then adds that the one who wrote the ingredients for this antidote must have tremendous knowledge of Japanese and Western medicine. As soon as he hears that a woman did this, his eyes widen and he asks if the woman in question is named Megumi. Kao and Sano are astonished and ask how he knows her. The doctor says that Megumi belongs to one of the most prominent medical families in Japan. Her dad was the crown jewel of their family and he even studied abroad. But then the war began and he was called back to serve. He died in the war while the rest of the family went missing, leaving the young Megumi all alone. She came to Tokyo and became a doctor's assistant after that, but the doctor died 3 years ago and she's been missing since then. The old doctor wants to meet a genius like her, but this makes Kao and Sano realize that they haven't seen Megumi for quite some time. Megumi was trying to run away while everyone was busy, but Kenshin stopped her and asked where she was going. She tries to beat around the bush, but Kenshin asks her to tell her the truth about herself. Megumi tells him about her early life and then skips to the doctor she worked for, who turned out to be working for Kanryu. He was Kanryu's Walter White and created drugs for him, but one day he created their masterpiece, which brought so much profit that a rift started between Kanryu and him. Kanryu killed the doctor and kidnapped her because she was his assistant and knew how to make that goddamn drug. Megumi cries, saying that she only wanted to live long enough to find her family by working in the medical line, but when she learned she was creating a deadly drug, she wanted to die. Kenshin consoles her, saying that she has suffered alone for long enough and that he will protect her now. He asks her to stay here, and even though Megumi is uncertain, Kao comes there and tells her she should remain here. Kao claims she knows what it is like to be alone, and that is why she cannot send her away, but she lays a condition that Megumi won't try to make a move on her Kenshin. Soon, Megumi becomes a part of their lives and cooks for them. Kenshin praises her cooking over Kao's and gets punched, and Megumi takes this chance to hit on him again. As Kao bickers with her, Sano arrives. Despite hearing about Megumi's tragic past, he doesn't have any sympathy for a criminal like her and still blames her for his friend's death. He refuses to eat anything made by the drunk cook, saying he would prefer Kao's food over hers. He hurts the sentiments of both girls with one statement, but Kenshin asks Megumi not to mind Sano's words too much because right now he's confused because he can't fully blame her for the drug ring. Later that day, an old bookseller comes as Megumi is doing laundry, and as she talks with him, he puts on a mask and reveals that he is Hanya. He silences Megumi, asking her to come with him or he will poison the well from which everyone here drinks, and she has no choice but to follow him. She meets Kanryu, who asks her to come back to him, but she says she would prefer to die instead. However, Kanryu threatens to burn Kao's dojo and kill everyone in it if she refuses to come, and Megumi is aghast. Kanryu tells her to accept her fate as the drug girl because she can't escape it, and she can only panic and cry as he leaves. At night, Kenshin and friends find the message Megumi had left behind, claiming that she was returning to her hometown. However, Kenshin knows she has no one in her hometown anymore right now, and Kanryu's men got her. He swears to bring her back and asks Sano for help, but he refuses to help the drug girl. Kenshin tells him to snap out of it and be a bigger man, asking if he ever looked into Megumi's sad eyes that craved for family and friends. He declares that she needed to be saved, and that is enough reason for him to risk his life for her. Kenshin leaves and Yahiko wants to join him too. Kao stops him, claiming he will only be a deadweight, but Yahiko declares that he owes Megumi his life and will do everything as a man to repay that debt. Kao can't stop him from going after that, and Sano is embarrassed that even Yahiko seemed more manly than him at the moment. So he joins Kenshin, saying that he won't think too much about the reasons and will go to stir up some trouble. Kenshin and friends barge in through the main gate, beating guards and challenging the private soldiers of Kanryu. Meanwhile, Megumi has reached Kanryu, who welcomes her back and tells her to start cooking immediately. However, she claims she is not here to cook for him, but to kill him. She draws a dagger and slashes Kanryu, who is terrified and backs away, but as Megumi is about to strike his heart, the dagger vanishes from her hand. The genius ninja Ashi took it, and with his safety guarantee, Kanryu takes out his frustration by beating Megumi unconscious. He then asks Ashi to call his torture experts to extract the recipe from her, but he asks Kanryu to open up his ears and hear what was going on outside. Outside, Kenshin is taking down Kanryu's goons in pentakill combos, and Sano is also wreaking havoc. Yahiko struggles, but even after Sano saves him, he still acts like he is the second in command here. After all the swordsmen are down, the gunners come, and Kenshin takes the first batch down before they pull the trigger. Their leader is left and gathers his men to shoot Kenshin again, but Sano tosses Yahiko at him and knocks him down. When the man gets up, he finds Yahiko has swaked his gun using the skills from his previous job. Yahiko points the gun at the man, who wets his pants and faints because of fear. Other gunners surround Yahiko, but Kenshin and Sano save him. Kanryu watches in disbelief as his guards are all knocked out, and he wonders why Kenshin is going to such lengths for Megumi. However, Ashi knows that Kenshin is the legendary Batusai, and people like him don't need any elaborate reason to follow their ideals. He wants to face the legendary swordsman in battle with his honor as the leader of the Onuwa Banshu ninjas on the line. Kenshin reaches outside the house and asks the terrified Kanryu to return Megumi immediately. Kanryu is shitting bricks, but then he starts laughing and offers to hire Kenshin and give him a salary equal to that of Google's CEO. Kenshin simply asks him to return Megumi, and Ashi advises his boss to give up on buying his services. Kanryu gives up but asks Kenshin for 1 hour, in which he wants to prepare for his future before he returns Megumi. Kenshin puts his sword in its sheath and walks away, giving Kanryu hope that he can take his time to torture Megumi and find out the recipe from her. However, he walks to the lamppost and cuts it, sending it flying to Kanryu's window as he furiously demands that he return the girl right away. Kanryu is terrified and tells Ashi to deal with Kenshin, and he claims that his ninjas have already taken position. Kanryu lashes out at him, asking him to not send the useless goblin and Cardi again, or he will not pay him the salary. This doesn't sit well with Ashi, who grabs his collar and tells him to not insult his brood if he wants to be protected by them. He takes Megumi with him and locks her in the observatory, where she wakes up and finds the ninja master in front of her. Ashi tells her that Kenshin and the group are here for her, and she cries, calling them hopeless idiots and asking why they had to risk it all after she was ready to sacrifice herself. Ashi doesn't reply but tosses her dagger back to her, saying that in 1 hour, Kanryu will start torturing her, and she can choose the easy way out. He tells her not to have high hopes for Kenshin because he is going to defeat him, but thanks her for bringing such a strong enemy to him and asks her to use the dagger well. On the other hand, Kenshin enters the mansion and finds Hanya waiting for him there. He is surprised because he expected the masked ninja to be higher on the power scale, but Hanya says it does not matter because they would have to fight eventually. Hanya rushes at Kenshin and successfully connects a couple of punches. Yahiko yells at him like an obnoxious fan, asking him to read his attacks and dodge them. Kenshin states that he is doing his best to read Hanya's movements, but his arms seem to be elongating right as he hits him. Hanya tells Kenshin that he is already under his spell, and there is no way he can defeat him without breaking it. Kenshin declares he will break the spell first and takes a weird stance, holding the sword straight towards his enemy. Hanya knows that the technique is like an iron wall that provides great defense. He taunts Kenshin to create an opening in his stance, but Kenshin has become a statue and doesn't even respond. Hanya ends up infuriating himself and rushes to strike Kenshin, who notices his trick at the last moment and dodges his attack before hitting his head. Kenshin claims that the horizontal stripes on Hanya's arms made them look 1 inch shorter, and he used that to throw off his sense of distance. He used his sword as a yardstick to measure his arm length, and when he did it, it was easy to take him down. Hanya gets up and commends his analysis as his mask breaks, and everyone realizes it was better for everyone if it had not broken. He looks just like my ex without her makeup and has no skin, no lips, and even no cheekbones. Hanya says that he did it to himself to become a spy who can wear any face with ease. He recites his life story, saying he was born in a land of poverty where killing and stealing were common, but Ashi took him in and gave him a reason to live. Hanya declares that he will throw his life away for his boss as he draws his Wolverine clans and attacks Kenshin. Kenshin dodges and blocks his attacks before they rush at each other for one final clash. Kenshin takes some mild injuries, and 1 second later, Hanya passes out as his claws shatter. Meanwhile, Megumi is in her room, pondering if she should really take herself off when Cambria knocks on her door and apologizes to her. He says Ashi locked the door, but he wants Megumi to open it from inside, so that they can run away and live a new life where they can atone for their sins. Megumi tells Kanryu to take his lies and shove them up his ass, and he starts cursing her while kicking her door. After that, Kenshin moves on to the next room, where he gets greeted by a demolition ball that almost crushes him and his friends. The powerlifter swinging the demolition ball around introduces himself as Shiki, the main guard of the Onowa Banshu group, before throwing at Kenshin again. However, Sano catches it and tells Kenshin to find Megumi while he deals with this musclehead. Kenshin takes Yahiko and runs with Shiki not even trying to stop him. He tells Sano that he was planning to let his boss get the strongest enemy, so he will be content dealing with the enemy's underling. Sano yells at him, saying that he is the one settling for an underling. He taunts Shiki, asking him to fight like a man by only using his fists. Shiki pulls the chain from the ball just as Sano rushes to him, but he ties his arms with one end of the chain while his arm is already tied to the other end. Shiki declares they will fight like this, punches Sano's guts, and thrashes him around. He thinks Sano has been knocked out and tells him that he is too weak to challenge him. However, Sano gets up and tells him to shut up and be a man. He rips apart the chain, asking him to fight without tricks, and Shiki does the same, impressed by his enemy's guts. They try to overpower each other, and Shiki wins as he puts Sano against the wall and rattles his brain with a headbutt. However, he is impressed by his strength and offers him to leave Kenshin and join the Onowa Banshu instead. He says that he was once a spy for the Imperialist army but got caught by Ashi, who didn't kill him and asked him to serve under him instead. He promised to make him invincible by using the secret muscle juice recipe of his clan, and Shiki took the offer. He keeps on praising his boss, saying that if he had fought in the War of Revolution, he would be crowned the strongest instead of Kenshin. Sano replies that all of the Onowa Banshu ninjas may be strong, but they are too drunk on power. He declares Kenshin is different, and he inspires everyone who gathers around him to find their strength. Shiki punches him and Sano blocks it, saying Kenshin is stronger than Ashi because he doesn't use his sword for his battles. This infuriates Shiki, who launches a barrage of headbutts on Sano and pounds his head into a mess. However, Sano tells him not to get too confident as he crushes his hands and then sends him flying with a punch before sending him crashing to the ground. Shiki is knocked out, and Sano tells him to fight Kenshin if he ever gets a chance, and then he will know what true strength is. He walks away but loses consciousness because of the brain injuries. In the meantime, Kenshin and Ashi finally come face to face, and Kenshin asks him for Megumi's location. Ashi says he will only tell him the answer if he can defeat him, and Kenshin realizes it is not going to be easy. Yahiko says that Ashi's sword is too short and useless, just like his other sword, but he simply tells him to stay away. Kenshin seconds his opinion and tells Yahiko to go back before telling him that Ashi's sword might be short, but is the best choice for defense and long-drawn battles. He claims he can't get too offensive with him, but Ashi is the one who attacks first. Kenshin blocks his sword but gets kicked away instead, and then Ashi launches a barrage of punches to send him flying. Kenshin is taken aback and realizes that Ashi's true strength is not his swordsmanship, but his ninja martial arts. As they keep fighting, Kenshin keeps on taking punches to his body and starts losing HP rapidly. Aoshi says that he hates imperialists and he will kill Kenshin because he is the strongest one of them. Kenshin asks him if he is fighting to get revenge for his shogun, but Aoshi says that the shogun was a coward who abandoned his soldiers and signed a peace treaty. He has no pity for that man. Instead, he regrets that the Onawa Benshu could not fight in the War of Revolution. He declares that if they had fought, the shogun would have won. The ninjas would have burned the city and killed the imperial officers in the ensuing chaos, making sure that the revolution failed. Ashi says that not fighting hurts his pride, and now he will prove his superiority by defeating the legendary Batusei. Kenshin replies that in the war, neither side could be said to be completely right or wrong, but he believes Ashi would be wrong no matter which side he fought for. He deems his idea of burning a city to win the war shallow and says that he has no ideals beyond his cold competitiveness. Kenshin swears to stop him as a revolutionary and a warrior. He moves at lightning speed and attacks Ashi, who blocks his swift attacks and then punches him away. Kenshin is on the floor and Yahiko shouts at him to get up. Kenshin simply tells him to not worry because he has already found a way to get past Ashi's defense. Ashi tells him to show what he has got, and they clash again. This time, Kenshin is holding the sword from its blade, and that puts Ashi off balance, allowing Kenshin to land a hit to his neck. He had figured out that Ashi can control the opponent's reach because of the difference in the length of their swords, but if Kenshin shortens the length of his sword, he has no advantage. Edoshi is impressed by his judgment and his guts for holding the sword at its base, even though it was not the sharpest around the area. He believes this ruthlessness is the true essence of a manslayer, and he decides to show him the true essence of a ninja. He sways around and charges at Kenshin with a slow attack. Kenshin blocks it, but then Ashi suddenly vanishes and appears behind him. His movement is so fast and unpredictable that Kenshin can only see his illusions, and when he tries to attack him, he can only cut his afterimages. Just then, Ashi attacks him from the top, and Kenshin takes the hit without getting a chance to block his attack. He falls to the ground as Ashi says that his illusory sword dance is an invincible move that has never failed him once. Yahiko is in disbelief and Ashi tells him to go home since the battle is over. The boy refuses to comply and draws his wooden sword, saying that he will fight on Kenshin's behalf now. Ashi says it will be the same to kill someone of his character right now, but then suddenly Kenshin speaks up, saying that he will not let Yahiko die, and he won't die here either. He gets up and his sheath breaks, making Ashi realize that he used it at the moment of impact to reduce the damage he took. He acknowledges Kenshin as the strongest and declares that he will kill him to take that title. He uses the sword dance again, assured that victory will be his, but Kenshin blocks his attack purely by instinct. Before he can process what happened, Kenshin is behind him, but Ashi manages to disarm him. He strikes him, but Kenshin catches his sword between his palms, saying that he couldn't care less about the title of the strongest man, and if Ashi wants it, he can have it 1,000 times over. Kenshin says that protecting his friends is much more important than anything else right now. He grabs the sword's blade tightly and hits Ashi's neck with its handle. The ninja spits blood but punches Kenshin in a desperate bid to not lose. Yahiko comes running to Kenshin, who claims to be fine and says that the fight is over since Ashi has lost consciousness because of the blow to his neck. Kenshin then thanks Yahiko for his encouraging words, but then Ashi wakes up just 10 seconds after being knocked out cold. He asks Kenshin to deliver the finish blow, but he refuses, saying that he won't kill anyone ever again. Kenshin then says that Ashi must have gotten plenty of job offers from the government after the revolution ended and asks him why he did not take them. He replies that he got all sorts of jobs, but they were only for him, and no one from his circus got even a single gig. He did not want to leave his men behind and betray them by taking up a job, so he stayed by their side and worked as a freelancer. In the 10 years after the war, he helped most of his subordinates find new lives, and now he has only 4 of them left. He wanted to defeat Kenshin for their sake so that he could take the title of the strongest man and give his men something to be proud of. Just then, Kanryu enters the room saying he is here to wrap up things himself with his Gatling gun from America. Ashi, Yahiko, and Kenshin are shocked as they see what Kanryu declares as the ultimate weapon and shoot them. The gunshots surprise Megumi and also wake up Sano. Haina comes to him too and says he has no intention to fight him now because he has accepted his loss. He is more worried about his master right now and wants to go ahead and check up on him. He wakes up Shiki, and in another room, Goblin and Cardi also decide to spring back into action after hearing the gunshots. Meanwhile, Kenshin and Ashi dodge the rain of bullets and ask Kanryu why he is doing this. Ashi gets hit, and as he falls to his knees, Kanryu takes a smoke break and tells him that he's going to the arms trade now and that this will be the product he sells. He laughs, saying that he will become as rich as Tony Stark by selling weapons, and Kenshin is furious at him, asking how many lives he will have to ruin before his greed is satiated. Kanryu simply mocks him, saying that neither a manslayer nor a ninja is any match for the power of money. He gives a 3-minute speech about why money is the greatest power in the world before he gets ready to shoot them again. However, just then Sano, Shiki, and Hanya arrive there, and Shiki runs to cover for his injured boss. Kenshin runs in the opposite direction, and Kanryu is confused about which one to shoot. He chooses to end Ashi first, but Shiki throws himself in the way of bullets to shield him. He is riddled with bullet holes, and everyone is horrified as he falls to his knees. Shiki tells Ashi that he is pretty satisfied by the life he lived and the death he chose. He is glad to use his invincible muscles to protect his boss, but then loses the last bit of his HP and dies. Kanryu was about to fire again, but then Cardi comes running to him and says that if he fires at him, the oil in his gut will catch fire and burn him. Kanryu decides to shoot his head instead, but as Cardi collapses, he leaves the rest up to Goblin, who is hiding in the barrel on his back. Goblin comes out of the barrel and shoots his drill bullet at Kanryu, who opens fire on him, deflecting the drill and shooting Goblin down. With their last breaths, Goblin and Cardi apologize to Ashi, saying that they were the most useless of his underlings till the end, leaving him heartbroken. Hanya asks Kenshin how long he needs to get his sword and cut down Kanryu, and he replies that he needs 10 seconds. Hanya says he can't promise him 10 seconds, but will distract Kanryu as long as he can to give him a chance. He asks Kenshin to save his master and then runs towards Kanryu, remembering the happy moments he spent with his master and friends. Kanryu shoots him down, and Ashi is utterly devastated. His sacrifice was not in vain as Kenshin picked up his sword. He is furious as Kanryu says it was a cunning tactic to send a monster face to act as a meat shield, but all such tricks are useless before the Gatling. He shoots Kenshin, only to notice that he ran out of bullets, and he realizes that he is screwed now. Kenshin walks to him and tells the panicking Kanryu to ask for his money to save him. He hits him against the wall and knocks him out, upholding his vow not to kill despite being full of rage. After that, Kenshin tells his friends that they should start searching for Megumi and leave Ashi on his own to mourn his friends. As they leave, Sano looks at Ashi, who was strong enough to injure Kenshin, and wonders if he has enough strength left in him to bear the loss of all his men. Kenshin and friends soon find the room Megumi is in and break through the door. They tell her she is safe now, but she just apologizes to them, saying that she dragged them into danger because of her selfish actions. She draws her dagger and points it at herself, saying that she will end her life because she has no chance to atone for her sins. She tries to stab herself and blood gushes out, but it is not hers. Sano stopped her at the last moment before scolding her about letting Kenshin and Nahiko's struggles go to waste. Megumi cries, saying it is unfair for her to be forgiven. Just then, they hear the police whistle and decide to escape before getting caught. Sano tries to pull Megumi away, but she resists and instead goes to Kenshin. She thanks him for everything and gives him medicine to stop bleeding. She decides to surrender to the police despite knowing that the penalty for making drugs is death. She reaches the police captain, and Kanryu claims that she is the one who made all the drugs. Megumi is about to agree to what he just said when suddenly Kenshin appears behind her and shuts her mouth. He says she is just a doctor kidnapped by Kanryu, who forced her to make the drug. Kenshin makes his friends testify in his favor, and as they do, the police captain lets them take Megumi's custody for now, despite Kanryu constantly screaming about arresting her. After that, Megumi asks Kenshin who the hell he is, and he tells her that he is manslayer Batusei. He killed too many people, and even if he tries to atone with his death, it will not help anyone, so he lives to use his sword to help others and bring them happiness. Megumi is stunned, and then Kenshin asks her to become a doctor and save more people than she has harmed as her atonement. After that, Kenshin asks the police captain about Ashi, but didn't see anyone like him. He says all they found were 4 beheaded corpses, and Kenshin realizes that Ashi has escaped using a secret passage. They find the exit of the passage and find Ashi holding the heads of his 4 subordinates. Everyone is horrified at the sight, and Sano confronts him, telling him that it is not his fault and that his subordinates died so that he could live. Those words have no effect on him, so Kenshin tells Ashi to come fight him again and earn the title of the strongest by defeating him. He asks the ninja to put that title on the graves of his men, and he accepts his challenge as he runs away. With that, Kenshin and friends return home, where Kao is eagerly waiting for him. She notices Kenshin covered in injuries, but he says that her fingers are also full of cuts, since she worked her hardest to cook good food for them. Kao doesn't let Yahiko and Sano take a small nap first, and he drags them along to eat. Megumi and Kenshin gladly join them, and despite looking good, Kao's cooking still tastes terrible. Later, Megumi heads out thanking Kenshin and Kao for helping her out and even referring her to become their regular doctor's assistant. Before leaving, Megumi tells Kenshin to come to her if he ever gets bored of Kao, but he is dumb as a brick and doesn't understand what she is offering. Sano tells Megumi not to tease the simpleton Kao so much, and she asks him not to be so jealous. She tells Sano to become a real man like Kenshin, and then maybe she can go out with him, but he makes a hard pass on that offer. Soon, Yahiko resumes his training, wondering if he can ever be as strong as Kenshin and become the heir to Kao's sword style. He keeps on running away from the dojo without telling anyone, and Kenshin is certain he is practicing his sword skills in secret. Both Kao and Sano disagree with him, saying that either he is slacking or hanging out with some girl. As Kao and Sano quarrel about which of them is right, Yahiko arrives there and tells them they are both wrong. Kenshin asks him where he went after ditching practice, and he replies that he practices regularly, so it was no one's business to ask him where he went. A few days later, as Yahiko runs from the dojo again, Kenshin and others follow him to find where he is going. They follow him to their regular restaurant, and Kao smugly says she was right about Yahiko running off to eat and chill. They enter the restaurant, but the boy is nowhere to be found. Then they learn from the hostess that Yahiko was working part-time here. She says he abruptly asked for work one day and asked her not to tell others about it. Kao wonders why he would do that, and Sano thinks it is because of the cute helper named Subaim, but the hostess says it cannot be the case because she started working here after Yahiko. The clumsy girl trips while carrying bags of rice, and Yahiko picks them up for her after scolding her for being a crybaby, saying that extra weight will help him train his lower body. As Kenshin and friends sit to eat, they wonder what the boy's actual motivation is to work here. Just then, Subaim comes to take orders from some customers but gets terrified of the rough bunch she sees. The leader of the bunch says there is no way to greet her master and asks her to follow him. Meanwhile, Yahiko was taking a break when he saw her being taken away. The girl was acting as a reluctant spy for the gang of thieves, and their leader, Mikio, asked her to hand her the clay molds for the keys to the restaurant. She asks him not to resort to stealing because he was once a vassal of the shogun. Mikio is furious and slaps her, saying that she doesn't get to order him around when she is just a lowly servant of his family. He says he will not force her to work for him, but he needs money and will kill the people at the restaurant to take it away. The girl is terrified and is about to hand him the molds when Yahiko stops her, asking if she is an idiot to believe that guy. He jumps forward, saying he won't let Mikio get away with what he is planning, and Kenshin also reaches there just then. Mikio's men attack Yahiko, but he overpowers them with his practiced sword. He is certain that he can win against them with his swordsmanship, but Mikio throws his stick at his feet to trip him down. The men surround Yahiko and start pummeling him, but Kenshin simply keeps on watching. Kao scolds him, asking why he is not helping Yahiko when he is in trouble, but Kenshin stops her from interfering in Yahiko's battle. He says that the boy will never get stronger if he is always protected by others, and he urges Kao to let him see it through to the end. Yahiko is getting thrashed, and the girl can't bear to see it, so she gives Mikio the key molds, and he tells his men to withdraw. Subaim cries as she apologizes for getting him dragged into this, but Yahiko says that she didn't drag him into anything. He decided to meddle on his own. He tells her not to worry because he will stop the thugs from raiding the shop at any cost. He walks away, determined not to take the help of Kenshin and others because this is his battle. The next day, Yahiko creates a training tool to simulate fighting many enemies at once, but Kao says it won't help at all. Yahiko is irritated and runs to Kenshin, asking him to teach him a technique to fight many guys at once. Kenshin tells him an old trick, pretending to run away from enemies and then defeating them one by one as they try to catch up to him. Yahiko is happy to hear that, but Kenshin says it will take tremendous leg strength and stamina to pull that off. Kao also comes there and tells him that when he wields his sword for the sake of someone else, he is not allowed to lose in any case. The next night, Mikio and his men are about to raid the restaurant when Yahiko appears out of nowhere and runs away with their spare keys. They chase after him and corner him in a narrow alley. They think he will be easy to defeat, but Yahiko lured them here on purpose to turn the battle into a one-on-one situation. Two attackers cannot cross the street at once, and Yahiko knocks them down easily, and when they come one by one, they are no problem for him. Mikio realizes his plan and tells his men to tire the boy down, but then suddenly, Kenshin and Sano arrive at the scene and scare the lackeys with just one stare. They hide before Yahiko can see them, and now the boy can fight the boss of the thieves in peace. Mikio draws out a real sword and charges at Yahiko, who can see his attacks and properly react to them. He pushes the guy back and keeps him on the edge. Meanwhile, Subaim was also sneaking around, hoping to save Yahiko from Mikio, but Kao finds her and tells her that she can't stop the man. She asks her to trust Yahiko and to have more faith in herself to refuse doing anything dirty for Mikio, even if her family has served under his family for generations. Mikio is getting frustrated and aims at Yahiko's feet, and he manages to lift only one leg up. However, with Tsubaim cheering him on, he realizes he can't lose or she will suffer, and he steps on Mikio's sword to stop him and then knocks him out. After that, Yahiko calls out Kao and others, asking why they were following him. The answer is obvious, and as everyone gathers, Tsubaim blushes as she thanks Yahiko for saving her and promises to be a strong girl from now on. Kao escorts her home, and then Sano says it is time for Yahiko to explain why he is working part-time jobs. Yahiko says he wants to buy a blunt sword like Kenshin so that he can win fights without harming anyone when he is strong enough. He is just working to save money for that, and Sano starts laughing at his childish idea. Yahiko is frustrated at Sano and says this is why he kept it a secret, but Kenshin calmly tells him that his Sakabato sword like his costs a lot. Soon, Kao was about to head out to train at a nearby dojo and asks Kenshin to accompany her as the master wants to meet him. Kenshin says he will pass, but when threatened with the overwhelming task of grocery shopping, he agrees to go with her. They go to Meikowa Dojo, where all men stop their training just as they see Kao enter the hall. Their teacher tells them to stop being simps and get back to practice as he comes forth to welcome Kenshin and Kao. The atmosphere gets tense as the students say how Master Meikowa wanted to test his skills against Kenshin once, but Kenshin has no intention to spar with him and decides to rest in a corner. Kao had never heard about Meikowa's true intentions, and he apologizes for not telling her about it earlier. He assures her that he no longer wants to fight Kenshin, as he can easily tell how strong he is. Soon, Kao starts training with the students, and Meikowa takes a seat next to Kenshin, telling him that most students are here only to see Kao. He feels pitiful for having his dead friend's daughter pull the crowd to his dojo, and he talks about how swordsmanship is heading down the path of extinction because of modernization. He remarks how there would be strong warriors challenging the dojo's day in and day out when suddenly the doors are flung open and a giant man walks in. The students try to stop him from wearing shoes inside the dojo, but he just flicks them aside like ants and goes to Meikowa to challenge him for a duel. The man takes off his hat and introduces himself as Raiju, a man who is concerned about the future of swordsmanship. Meikowa sees that the man is indeed a strong challenger and accepts to fight him in the best of 3 rounds. Just then, Reiju's student Yuta comes running with his swords and asks his master what kind of sword he is using for this challenge. Reiju says that the master here wants to use bamboo swords, and Yuta laughs, calling him a wimp. Yahiko kicks him as he tells him to shut down, and they get into a heated argument. Reiju tells Yuta to shut up and then borrows a bamboo sword from the dojo, claiming he only uses real swords. The duel begins with Kao acting as the referee. Meikowa displays his fighting spirit, but Reiju is much faster than him and crushes his shoulder before dealing a finishing blow on his head. Everyone is worried about the master and Kao wants to call the doctor, but Meikowa gets up, saying that the duel is not over yet. He attacks Reiju, but gets knocked out cold. Reiju grabs him and aims to stab his throat with broken bamboo, even as Kao tells him that the fight is over. Kenshin stops him from taking the old man's life, but Reiju says that the one who loses in a fight of swords has no right to live. He declares that the old man was a fool and a coward to fight with the bamboo sword in the first place. Reiju then challenges Kenshin with real swords because he has heard of his strength, but Kenshin refuses to use his sword as a display of strength. Reiju changes his tactic and tells Yuta to take the sign of this dojo and burn it because the master has already lost. No one of the students rises to challenge him, so Kao takes up his challenge to save the name of the dojo. Kenshin has no choice now, and he accepts Reiju's challenge to save Kao, but still refuses to use real swords. Reiju says he is fine with using the wooden sword too, and the first one to score a point wins. Kao tells Kenshin to be careful about his opponent's speed, but he tells her it is fine. The duel starts and Reiju attacks first, forcing Kenshin to only dodge his attacks. However, he is doing this on purpose to force the match to a tie so that Reiju returns empty-handed. He realizes his plan and uses his secret attack, which is so fast that his sword vanishes for an instant. Kenshin makes the right choice to dodge the attack as his sword gets split into 2 and even the floor is cut by Reiju's strike. However, he is satisfied with this and leaves the dojo after learning Kenshin's name. Yuta taunts Yahiko that his master is stronger than Kenshin, and he replies that Kenshin didn't even show half of his strength. They argue again, squaring to settle the score in a real match someday. After that, Kenshin and others inspect the cut on the floor, and he realizes that it was made by something sharper than even a real blade, and he wonders who Reiju is. The next day, Kenshin tells Sano about the incident as he tries to figure out Reiju. Just then, a carriage stops in front of the gate, and a butler hands Kenshin an invitation from Reiju, asking him to meet him. They take the carriage and arrive at Billionaire's house, who turns out to be Yuta's dad. He takes Kenshin to Raju's place while leaving his son in charge of other guests. Kenshin meets Raju on a bridge, but his friends have also snuck around by gagging and tying Yuta to a tree. Rai talks with Kenshin about the spineless swordsmanship of this era and declares his plans to eradicate all the weak sword styles from Japan and then lead the swordsmen with his style to make them rise to glory once again. He asks Kenshin to join him because he is a true master. But Kenshin has understood that Reiju also wields an ancient sword style and says that all ancient styles are focused only on killing. He does not plan to be friends with a man who promotes violence without need for it, and he says that even if the death of swordsmanship is a sad thing, he will prefer it to making the world a cruel place. Reiju draws his sword, telling Kenshin that if he is not a friend, he is his enemy from this moment on. He attacks Kenshin with his signature move named Izuna and destroys the bridge. Kenshin dodges his attacks and is pushed into a corner as Reiju cuts through a tree with just one swift swing. He declares that he taught himself this secret attack just by reading old texts and becoming invincible. Reiju even slices a rock in half, but then Kenshin counterattacks by drawing his sword, which shatters his blade. He displays his Sakabado, saying it is proof that he will no longer wield swords that kill people. Reiju decides to back off for now, but he still thinks Kenshin is an enemy. Kao and others are relieved and plan to return to their dojo, but they almost forget about freeing Yuta. He is furious at them, but Yahiko tells him that if he has guts, he should stop following the big guy around and come to their dojo to challenge him, but with a bamboo sword. Yuta comes to challenge Yahiko at dawn, saying he never specified the time for the challenge. They take their positions, but then everyone notices that Yuta doesn't even know how to hold a sword because no one has ever taught him to do that. He is embarrassed, but as Kenshin asks him why Reiju isn't teaching him, he replies that the master is busy crushing other styles for the future of swordsmanship, and he doesn't want to bother him. Kao has pity on the boy and decides to teach him the basics because he is already here and Yahiko gets jealous of him. Later, Kenshin prepares rice balls for everyone and talks with Yuta, who reveals that he wants to grow stronger to put his father to shame. He claims that his dad left the way of a samurai and was selling swords to foreigners, and he wants to become a true samurai to show him that he is a coward. Kenshin realizes that Yuta is as proud as Yahiko, but his pride is leading him in a different direction. Kao also heard everything, and she tells Yuta that whatever his objective is, she can tell that he really wants to learn swordsmanship. She asks him to learn from her, and despite Yahiko's objections, Yuta accepts the offer. He then goes to Reiju to ask for permission to take another teacher, and he lets him do that, but asks him to gather intel on Kenshin. Yuta is shocked to learn that he only ever helps out with chores. However, his rivalry with Yahiko intensifies as time passes, and he soon reveals that he has greater potential for swordsmanship than everyone thought. Soon, Kao takes everyone to the restaurant, but Yahiko is working his shift and gets into a fight with Yuta there too. After they have calmed down, Kao asks Yuta to join as one of her permanent students, and he politely refuses, saying that even though training with her is fun, he wants to grow stronger under Raiju only. He leads them to the place where he met Raiju. One day their carriage was attacked and his father bowed before the bandits, offering to pay as much money as they wanted to spare their lives, but Yuta refused to follow his cowardly deeds. The bandits were about to rough him up when Reiju arrived out of nowhere, and with just one slash, he scared the bandits away. Yuta was impressed by his strength and decided to be his disciple at that very moment. He still believes in his strength and asks Kenshin to fight his master fair and square when the time comes. However, he is stunned to notice that his master is the one who resorts to cheating by attacking Kenshin without a warning. Everyone dodges his attack, and while Yuta thinks Raiju is just messing around, he is serious about defeating Kenshin by any means possible. He launches a barrage of strikes on him, but nothing hits, and even when he tries to kick dust to blind Kenshin, it is useless. Kenshin uses his finishing move and hits Rei's head, and even though he takes damage, he refuses to give up. He decides to use his ultimate attack called Wind Scythe and launches powerful wind strikes towards Kenshin, who is forced to guard against them to protect those behind him. However, the attack still carries and injures Yuta, but Reiju does not care about him, saying that the wimp wasn't even his student. He just kept him around because his dad is rich and can fund his project to restore swordsmanship, and he doesn't care that he loses him now. Yuta is devastated, but Reiju says his priority is to defeat Kenshin now. He gets into position again, but Kenshin gives him a cold gaze, telling him to wait here because he will come to settle things with him after taking Yuta to the hospital. They take him to Megumi and the old man, who say that even though the boy's life is not in danger, his hand has been damaged so badly that he won't be able to wield a sword again. Yahiko is enraged on hearing that he has lost his only rival and asks the doctor to fix him, but Megumi apologizes, saying it is not possible. Just then, they hear something falling in the room and rush in to find that Yuta has fallen from his bed after realizing that his right arm is not moving at all. He is distraught by Raiju's betrayal, but then the doctor says Kenshin has left to fight him. Yahiko tells Yuta to come with him so that they can see Kenshin settle in the score, as that will help him rise back to his feet. They leave to see the fight despite the doctor's warning, and Keo follows them. Meanwhile, Sano almost challenges Raiju to a fight, but then Kenshin arrives there. Raiju declares he will defeat him this time and attacks him with his wind scythe, but Kenshin has realized his trick by now. He dodges his attacks, saying that because of the fast speed of the sword, he creates a vacuum blade by dislocating the air and sending it to his enemy, but after learning this, the technique becomes useless. Frustrated by not being able to hit him, Raiju launches a flurry of wind scythes and Kenshin dodges every single one of them but then gets hit by the last one. Raiju rejoices as he declares that his sword style and technique are invincible, but Kenshin says that he is just a third-rate swordsman if he gets elated by inflicting such a small wound on his enemy. He realizes that despite talking about violence and battles, Raiju is just a wannabe who has never killed a man. He is furious at being analyzed so well and launches another flurry of attacks at Kenshin, who can only dodge because there is no way to block the wind scythe. Raiju pushes him back by using his close-range and long-range attacks at once and then manages to injure his leg. He thinks his victory is certain now that he has injured Kenshin's leg and says he can't even fight back because of their range difference. He attacks Kenshin again, who does not even dodge it and instead counterattacks by using his own long-range attack. He releases the sword with great speed towards Raiju and hits his head with its hilt before doubling down on the attack by sheathing the sword in the air itself and hitting him again. Kenshin then jumps up and stabs Rei's head with his sheath, knocking him out cold. Yahiko and others arrive there just to see the conclusion of the battle, and he rushes to Kenshin's side. However, Raiju regains consciousness and grabs him, threatening to kill him, but Yahiko tells him to go ahead and kill him if he dares. Kenshin tells Raiju that while his sword style may be able to slash people, he cannot kill them because he doesn't have it in him. He tells him to abandon his sword before he meets someone who does not hesitate to kill and loses his life. Red loses his mind and drops Yahiko, realizing that he has been utterly destroyed. Kenshin and others return home and Yuta tells Raiju farewell. Soon after that, Yuta falls into depression and refuses to meet anyone. His father regrets trusting Raiju and says that he is going to move to Germany because their medical knowledge is the most advanced in the world, and Yuta might be able to get better there. Kenshin and friends visit them to say goodbye, and while the adults can't figure out what to tell the boy, Yahiko suddenly rushes and attacks him. Yuta blocks his strike, and then Yahiko asks him if he's going to stay mopey for the rest of his life. He tells him to grow stronger than Raiju, shake off his depression, or stay a loser forever. His words get through to Yuta, who attacks him and says he will never be a loser who gives up swordsmanship and will do it with just one arm if it comes to that. As they fight, the adults realize that they do not have to worry about the boys anymore. Soon, it is time for Yuta to leave, and Yahiko and Keo tell him to return to the dojo soon. As Sano and Yahiko head back, Keo notices Kenshin looking down, and he talks about how Raiju and Meikoa were both worried about the future of swordsmanship in their own ways, but looking at promising kids like Yahiko and Yuta makes him realize that not everything is lost. One day, Kenshin sees a dream about his final fight with the Shinsengumi captain, but then he is woken up by Yahiko and Kao, who have finished their practice at the Meikoa dojo. They slap him awake and drag him out, and Kenshin later tells them about the dream and about how the elite samurai unit Shinsengumi were his greatest rivals as an imperialist warrior. He claims that the officers of Shinsengumi and the three captains were especially remarkable, but after the age of samurai ended, they vanished into thin air. Kenshin says that many of them were strong enough to stop him on a draw, and he feels closer to them than he feels to the imperialists turned officers now. Kao remarks that it is unusual for Kenshin to talk so much about his past at a stretch, and he realizes something odd is going on with him because he hadn't had dreams about his past in many years. Meanwhile, Sano was waiting for Kenshin and others at the dojo for some free food when a medicine vendor came there to offer free samples. However, Sano noticed his calloused arms and confronted him, and the man reveals that he was here to kill Batusai. He draws his sword, and Sano decides to face him with his bare fists. He punches the man with all his might, but he says that his punches are strong in this peaceful era, but if he had been alive during the war, he would be considered a weakling. After that, he says it is his turn and attacks Sano. On the other hand, Kenshin and friends run into Megumi on the way, who wants to hang out with them on the weekend. She notices Kenshin is not looking well, but he insists that all is well. They soon arrive at the dojo and find a hole in the wall. Kenshin is worried and rushes inside to find Sano severely injured with a blade stuck in his shoulder. Megumi gets to work and saves Sano's life after a long and exhausting surgery, while Kenshin keeps watching the dojo. Based on the red box left behind by the attacker and the injuries Sano received, he is certain that the attacker is Seigo Hajime, the captain of the 3rd squad of the Shinsengumi. Kenshin believes Seigo's skills have not declined at all, and with his Sakabato and vow to never kill anyone again, he might not be able to stop him. Meanwhile, Sato meets up with the Secretary of the Senate, who had asked him to assassinate Kenshin. Another one of the Secretary's assassins, Akamatsu, who must be a great snitch judging by the number of stitches on his body, is there, and he does not like Sato at all. He goes to meet Sato during dinner one day and complains that he stole the task of killing Kenshin from him. Sato replies that he has no problem giving it back to him and asks Akamatsu to take the credit for killing him but leave the money to him. Akamatsu is happy to get this arrangement, and Sato sends a letter to lure Kenshin out. Soon, Kenshin receives the letter and he leaves to face him, telling Ahiko to lock up the dojo properly because he is leaving on a short errand trip. Kenshin goes to the specified location hoping to fight Sato, but gets attacked by Akamatsu instead. Kenshin dodges his chain and then quickly disarms him without even breaking a sweat. He asks Akamatsu to spill the reasons he attacked him, and he begs for forgiveness, saying that Sato forced him to do it. Kenshin doesn't believe him but lets it slide and walks away, only for Akamatsu to show his true colors and attack him again. He ties Kenshin's hands with his hidden chains and slams him around repeatedly. On the other hand, Sato is about to make a move on Kao and the dojo. He reaches the dojo and introduces himself as a police officer as he tells Kao that the police captain sent him here to give Kenshin information about people who are out for his life. Kao is worried and trusts Sato, allowing him to wait at the dojo until Kenshin returns from his errand. She tells this bit to Megumi, who believes that the people targeting Kenshin must have defeated Sano too. However, she assures Kao that Kenshin won't lose to anyone, and that he should be fine even when he's on his own. Kenshin, however, is not fine and has lost consciousness after being pummeled again and again. Akamatsu boasts that he is a better assassin than Jin or Sato, saying that the politician who hired them should have realized his value from the beginning. Kenshin was just pretending to be unconscious, and he heard it all. Akamatsu steps back, realizing that he might be in trouble. He tries to slam Kenshin against a rock again, but he uses his feet to break the impact and then holds his sword in his mouth as he lunges towards Akamatsu, defeating him. As Kenshin returns to the dojo, Kao comes out to receive him and is worried about his state. She informs him that a policeman came to warn them about attackers, but as soon as Kenshin enters the dojo, he recognizes Sato's back profile. Sato greets him, saying he has gotten a lot weaker in the past decade, and Kenshin replies that he also seems to have rotten away because no matter how shrewd he was in the past, he never resorted to underhanded methods like sending underlings to a fight and holding people hostage. Kenshin refuses to acknowledge Sato as a samurai, and he starts laughing, saying that Kenshin is even more pathetic than him if he had trouble fighting someone like Akamatsu. Kenshin does not mind his words because he does not need the power of a manslayer anymore, and he claims he is satisfied with being a wandering samurai who can protect those he holds dear. Sato replies that he doesn't have the strength to do even that. He tells Kenshin that he could have killed his dear friends anytime, and he let even weaker opponents like Jin and Reiju hurt those he cares about. Sato takes his stance as he says that the manslayer Batuse cannot protect people without killing others. He claims that killing those they find evil immediately was the only thing the Shinsengumi and Imperial swordsman shared, and he cannot bear to see how far his old enemy has fallen. On hearing that Kenshin is still adamant about not killing anyone, Sato changes his stance and tells him to attack him so that he can destroy everything he holds dear. As Kenshin walks towards him, Kao holds his shirt and he assures her that he must fight this battle. That is not what she is worried about because she feels that after this battle is over, Kenshin will somehow vanish. Sato charges at him first and Kenshin jumps to dodge his speedy thrust. However, Sato manages to stab him while he tries to counterattack and then swings the sword to widen Kenshin's wound before kicking him away. Sato takes his stance again and charges at Kenshin with his signature thrust that he has perfected over the years. Kenshin blocks his attack but still gets overwhelmed. Kao rushes to help him, but she realizes that Kenshin is looking different once again. She tries to shield him from Sato, but Kenshin pushes her to the side because he plans to finish his battle. Sato also realizes that Kenshin has won all his battles by waking up his powers from his glory days, and the longer he fights, the more his personality returns to how he was in the past. Kenshin charges at Sato and moves so fast that he feels he has disappeared. Kenshin is about to launch an attack from the bottom, but Sato notices him just in time and kicks him away. He is taken aback by the unnatural speed of the previous attack and how Kenshin was panting after it, but as he sees his eyes, he realizes what was happening. Because he was fighting his greatest rival, Kenshin suddenly returned to Batusai mode in an instant, and there is only one way to verify if it is true. Sato thrusts at Kenshin with his full power, but he dodges the thrust and the sweeping attack that follows with unbelievable speed before launching a blow to the back of Sato's neck that sends him crashing through the wall. Kenshin taunts Sato, saying that he seems to have lost his touch, and Sato declares he will fight with the intention of killing him now. Kenshin says it is his line, and as the two men clash, Keiwa's heart sinks. Kenshin gets more intense with each passing moment and starts overwhelming Sato even more. He breaks his sword into two and declares the next thing to get cut will be his neck. Kao realizes that Kenshin is no longer himself and has turned into the manslayer Batusai, and she pleads for someone to stop him. She cries, saying that she will lose Kenshin if the fight continues, but then Sano arrives there, supported by Megumi, and tells Kao that they can't stop those two because only someone who has tasted the violence of war can do something now. Even with his broken sword, Sato rushes to fight Kenshin, prioritizing his pride over his life. Kenshin drops his sword and goes to beat him barehanded, but Sato also gives up on using the broken sword and decides to settle things using his fists. Kenshin is unsettled by his punches, and then Sato uses his coat to strangle him, but Kenshin hits his sheath so hard that it rises on the other side and hits him in the throat. Both of them are almost completely out of breath and energy, so they decide to settle things with the next move. Kao is in tears and runs at Kenshin to stop him, but just before she can reach him, he rushes ahead to defeat his archenemy. Before they can collide, a stern voice tells them to stop, and both Kenshin and Sato flinch. They look back to see a general who tells Sato that his mission was not to kill Kenshin but only to judge his abilities. Sato replies that he won't let even the general interfere with his battle, but then another man comes out of a carriage, shocking both the samurais with his appearance. The man tells Sato that he doesn't want his life or Kenshin's life to end here in vain, and Kenshin recognizes that he is the mastermind behind all this. He calls the bearded man a former revolutionary warrior and the current home minister, Okubo Toshimichi. Nahiko asks why everyone is surprised like this man is a big shot, and Sama tells him that Okubo controls the Japanese government single-handedly and is the most powerful person right now. Seiga picks up his coat and says they can't fight in peace now, so he will be leaving, and Kenshin replies that it is a lucky day that Okubo saved his life. As he walks away, the general shouts at Sato, and he gives him the report of his mission at the spot, claiming that Kenshin was useless, but Batusai is still going strong. After that, Okubo asks Kenshin to talk to him in private, and he refuses to talk until he lets his friends in on the gossip. He then realizes that he is still in Batusai mode and hits himself to return to his calm self. Kao is relieved that he is back and rushes to hug him, but she is a bit too rough and opens Kenshin's wounds. While his friends tend to him, Okubo and the general decide to agree to his terms because they need his help. He tells Kenshin and gang that he will cut to the chase and informs them that the man called Shishio is starting to move again. Sano tells the minister to give the rest of the folks some context, and Kenshin explains that Makoto Shishio can be said to be his successor. He took over his role as the assassin after Kenshin became a commando, but he never left the world of shadows and very few people know about him. Kenshin asks Okubo how Shishio can be alive because he was said to have died in the war, and then he learns that he did not die but was assassinated by the imperialists. Okubo says that Shishio had great talent, but he had a warped personality that could be a risk factor later on, so they killed him and even set his body on fire. But despite that, he proved to be a tough son of a gun and survived. Now he has gathered many notorious warriors under him and threatens to destroy the government. Okubo asks Kenshin to assassinate Shishio for the betterment of Japan, but his friends are determined not to let him return to being a murderer again. Okubo tells Kenshin that he has 1 week to decide his response and leaves. On the other hand, Akamatsu tells his boss that the home minister himself came to stop the fight between Kenshin and Sato, and they should escape before they are exposed. However, Sato arrives there and kills Akamatsu immediately, telling the boss that he is next. He declares that he works as a spy for the government and exterminates corrupt people like him who are leeching off the country, because even though the times have changed, the Shinsengumi will strike down evil wherever it sees it. He kills the boss and then wonders what decision Kenshin will make going forward. Soon, a week passes and Kenshin has been living carelessly at the dojo. The day of reckoning is here, and his friends ask him what he plans to do. Sano doesn't trust Okubo, but Kenshin does, and he says that if he had become corrupted, Sato would have killed him long ago because despite their differences, he recognizes that Sato still believes in his brand of justice. Kenshin then leaves alone to meet Okubo, saying he doesn't want to involve his friends anymore. Kao is worried, but her friends assure her that Kenshin won't leave her alone. Meanwhile, Okubo is also heading towards the dojo, wondering how he can convince Kenshin to help him defeat Shishio. However, an assassin sent by Shishio kills him before telling him that even Kenshin won't be able to do anything against them. The coincidences fit together like a line in Tetris, and a bunch of discontented samurais who plan to kill Okubo stop his carriage to find that he was already dead. They see no one who could have done this and decide to steal the credit for killing him. Kenshin is aghast as he finds that Okubo has been murdered, and Shishio's henchman tells him not to oppose his boss if he wants to live. Kenshin turns back to confront him, but the assassin is already gone. After that, he goes to the general's office with Sato and meets a minister, who was the last person to see Okubo alive. He talks about how Okubo was planning the redevelopment of Japan and shaping it into a proper democracy this morning, and only a great man like him could see it through to the end. Later, Sato tells Kenshin that after Japan has lost its greatest leader and only worthless scum are left behind, unfit to take the reign of the country in their hands, so he asks him to make his decision soon. Kenshin returns to the dojo at night and tells Kao that Shishio assassinated Okubo and he cannot leave him to do as he pleases. He declares that he will be leaving to deal with him, and Kao is devastated. She asks him if he will kill Shishio, but Kenshin is not certain about it right now. However, he is sure that no matter how long he lives a peaceful life, he will remain a murderer at heart, and the longer he stays here, the more risk he puts his friends in. Kenshin says he was really happy when Kao accepted him despite knowing her past. She is too stunned to speak, and then Kenshin hugs her, thanking her for everything and bidding her farewell. Kao starts crying as Kenshin leaves, and she falls to her knees while crying out his name, but Kenshin does not turn back because he knows he has to fight greater battles now.